Michael Chandler, we are fucking back, bro.
We're back, dude.
How you feeling since the announcement?
Good, man. I feel like I made this decision like 4 weeks ago, so I've known for a while, and it's always hard because you know what you're training for. You know, my management knew, my wife knew, a couple of the select boys knew, but like now that the whole world knows, it's good because now we can finally, this one especially, because it's not just announcing a fight, it is foregoing the Conor fight for now, at least.
Moving on from that for now.
Moving on from that and I'm happy with my decision. I'm happy with the opponent. Number one contender fight, 5-round co-main event underneath John Jones versus Stipe at MSG, which would be my 4th time at the world's most iconic arena.
I mean it's going to be insane. Yeah. John Jones coming back.
Yeah, it's going to be big. I actually, because we were waffling back and forth, like I knew I knew we were moving on from Conor for now, and I knew we were going to fight Charles, but I was trying to get it at MSG. And my text to Hunter Campbell, whenever he was like waffling back and forth, I was like, hey, 2021 Chandler versus Gaethje, fight of the night and fight of the year at Madison Square Garden. 2022 Chandler versus Poirier, candidate for fight of the year, fight of the night. Every single time I step inside MSG, I blow the roof off the place. And it was actually funny. I saw John Jones at the fights this last week, and he's like, hey, I know you're the co-main, but could you save some excitement for me in the main event? I was like, nah, probably not, man. I'm going to try to steal the show.
Are you fired up that it's at MSG?
I am. I actually, it's bittersweet because I've kept saying this. I've now fought in the UFC. This will be my 6th fight. And I have never fought in Vegas. So I've always wanted to fight in Vegas. That was one of the stings of this Conor fight falling through. It was going to be in Vegas, and I'll fight in Vegas eventually, but the boys are ready to fight in Vegas, man. I want to enjoy and take in a Vegas fight week,
Right. Outside of just sitting in the stands watching it happen.
Yeah, I've watched a ton of fights in Vegas, and so it's just different because the UFC takes over the entire city. Which, if you had a second best city like MSG, New York, the media, ESPN, like all of the Barstool, like all of the big media companies are there with a huge presence in New York. So you always end up with a ton of extra media, which is a ton of extra exposure. So that's a good thing. And it's MSG. Someday I'll be speaking from a stage or writing a book or something and be able to talk about how I fought at MSG, the world's most iconic arena, 4 times. Yeah. Which to me, I just told you I'd rather fight in Vegas, but someday when it's a story and where you're creating, making people feel something, they're like, dang, this dude fought in the same vicinity as Muhammad Ali and freaking Tyson and De La Hoya and all those guys. Yeah,
Madison Square Garden's got like that historic pull to it, where like Vegas, it's like if you're a UFC fighter, like you want the big pay-per-view in Vegas. Yeah, because it's city.
Yeah, but MSG is iconic. It's
when cool. You said you made the decision 4 weeks ago, how long had that offer been on the table, or did it all come into fruition really quickly? Because obviously everyone knows it's been the 2 years in the making with Conor that kind of falls through. Walk us through that, about how that offer kind of came to you.
So we when the fight fell through 2 weeks before June 29th, it was like, June 15th or whatever it was. Immediately you start thinking, okay, is a broken pinky toe. We found out that. So it's like, hey, a broken pinky toe, we should be able to fight in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So immediately we're like, hey, no big deal. And Conor's camp was saying it's going to be quick. We're going to, hopefully schedule it for August, September. Then you start talking about the Sphere. You start talking about, Salt Lake City was thrown out there.
Let me interrupt you. Before you learned that it was like a broken pinky toe, and then like, hey, this could be quick and everything else, wasn't there a moment where you still might have fought on that June 29th weekend?
There was. So they actually offered it to Max Holloway, which he was on vacation and he wasn't in camp. I mean, to put your BMF belt up, with having no training camp, short notice, UFC will throw a lot of money at you, but is it the smartest thing for your career? In the position that Max is in, Max is already the BMF champ, and he's already number one contender to go fight for the 145 title, and he was steadfast and focused on going to win the 145 title. And in this sport, the sport moves fast in a very good way and sometimes in a very bad way. So if you're ever in a position where you can become the number one contender, you don't want to pass that up, because, just like Justin Gaethje's situation, Justin Gaethje probably would have been talking about fighting for the lightweight title, but now he lost to Max. So now he doesn't have the steam to go fight for the title. He's got to go get another win.
Yeah.
And then also, obviously that was June 29th. Now we just had this past weekend, UFC 306 at the Sphere, Merab versus O'Malley hadn't been announced yet. And there was talks of me and Max. They actually offered it to Max, fighting me for the BMF belt at the Sphere, and rightfully so. He turned it down because he wants to go win the title, and he can go defend the BMF belt whenever.
Right.
So there was a lot of different moving parts going, but Charles Oliveira's name had gotten brought up, and it's a fight I want to run back. It's a vengeance fight. It's a number one contender fight. It puts me right back into the title contention. Obviously, the last year and a half, I've focused on doing The Ultimate Fighter, which is really, really awesome promotion on ESPN, 12 weeks, and then fighting the sport's biggest star, which doesn't exactly do great things for you athletically to move toward the title. So now I'm going to get back to my main thing, which is coming into the UFC. And I've always been wanting to be the number one guy in the world and fight for the world title, win the world title. So now that's where we're at. Fight Charles Oliveira, Madison Square Garden, beat him, become the number one contender. And then I have an option to go fight Islam, who I think is going to be still the champ by then, or Conor, if Conor can get his house in order.
Yeah, man, it's been the photo of Mike right there. Yeah, it's been such a roller coaster with the McGregor stuff. When did Oliveira's name come up to you? Because I would assume that, all right, whenever you realize that the Conor fight's getting punted, maybe, hopefully, just a few extra weeks, you're looking at September, and then you start to feel that, okay, he might not be prepared for way longer than that, because I'm almost assuming that when Oliveira's name gets brought up, it's almost like a no, like how do we get this Conor one going?
Yeah, it's definitely we want to exhaust all the options to fight Conor at a realistic date before we made a pivot. But then it just seemed as though it was going to keep getting pushed off. I mean, it was like, hey, if I could fight Conor in December, I'm not going to say yes to Oliveira. But as soon as that became a no for whatever reason, I'm like, man, boys, I'm not waiting any longer. Let me go bet on myself. And this is it's been my brand, obviously, the walk-on mentality, betting on yourself. Because back in 2004, the young kid from St. Louis, Missouri, bet on himself to go walk on to Mizzou when everybody around me said, don't do it. You're crazy. What are you thinking? You're just going to be a punching bag for 5 years, end up becoming an All-American and a 4-year national qualifier and a 3-year team captain.
Let's go.
And so I bet on myself and it worked out. And then I also, the 34-year-old me in 2020, the 34-year-old me in 2020 bet on himself to say, you know what? I love what I've done in Bellator. I'm the biggest name in Bellator. I know it's a smaller organization, but I have financial security. I have career security, but I want to go bet on myself. And I told Hunter Campbell that. I said, hey, throw me into the fire right away. I'm going to come over to the UFC. I want to be a good thing for your organization. I want to fight the toughest guys right away. And if I go 0-2 and you guys cut me, I can at least know that I tried to bet on myself and take the biggest risk possible. And now, obviously, coming into the UFC, here I am fighting for the number one contender spot again, fights of the year, fought for a world title, going to end up fighting for a world title in 2025 with this win. Betting on myself has always worked out. So in this scenario where I have a contract with Conor that was already signed, all the fighters in the world who have crapped on me and said I'm waiting and wasting my time and all of the different things that they've said, behind closed doors, in their heart of hearts, they know that they would not have bet on themselves and left this matching up with Conor. They would have waited as long as possible. But I'm done waiting, and I'm ready to go out there, take a chance, let it fly, and bet on myself.
How weird was it for you? Because obviously the last year and a half has been kind of a new process for you. You talk about like betting on yourself. Like even when you came into the UFC, you're flying and making sure you're prepared, making weight in case you're a backup fight. Hey, throw me against whoever. You face Hooker coming out, have a big win there. You're facing all these badasses along the way as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. How new was it for you to kind of like sit, be patient? And the world speculates and talks. I mean, you talk about Conor being the biggest name. He's also like a public like favorite too. So anything that comes up, it gets pushed back. You try to call him out. You got people pushing every which way on like why, Mike's going to wait for Conor. He's going to do all this stuff. How hard was it for you to kind of wait this last year and a half, especially what you knew behind closed doors? Yeah. Because you're thinking that it's going to make right at some point, but for whatever reason, it didn't come into fruition right now. How tough was it for you to kind of sit in the batter's box this last year and a half and not go out there and do what you normally do? Yeah,
it was, I had my days where I struggled. We've had conversations where it's like, everything's good. And then the next time it's like, dude, I don't know what's happening. Conor tweeted this. The whole world ran with it. This guy's talking. There was the whole drug testing thing at the very beginning, had to be inside the USADA pool and all that kind of stuff. There was just so many different layers. And that's what Hunter Campbell said at the very beginning was like, hey, we're going to do this Ultimate Fighter thing, but just, I want you to be prepared. Booking a fight with Conor McGregor is like nothing you've ever done before. It's not normal. And I held on tight. And I also enjoyed the time off. Excuse me. I also enjoyed the time off, honestly. I think no matter how much you love a sport, it can chew you up and spit you out and chip away at your spirit and your soul. As you know, like today I leave and go to Florida. I'm going to leave my family for the next 8 weeks, right? And doing that every couple months, nonstop, watching my sons grow, missing bedtimes and missing dinners with them and missing sporting events and missing all these things. You do it so much and you're constantly going and you're very happy because God has called you to do something, but you also are constantly dealing with am I always making the right decision? Dealing with the dad guilt, dealing with the husband guilt. So I needed a little bit of time off. So I spent the last year and a half serving my family, loving on my family, working on my businesses outside of just fighting, setting myself up for after I lay the gloves down eventually. And it was good for my soul. And obviously I had a litmus test April, May, and June to go train for Conor, and it fell through, but it was the best training camp of my life because I fell back in love with the sport. As cliche as it sounds, you don't know how much you love something until it's taken away from you. So being away from the sport for a year and a half, I was happy. I needed a little bit of time off, but it also made me love the sport more. It made me love my coaches more. It made me love the process more. It made me love what I get to do more. So I grew as an individual in that time. And then now I get to go let it fly and fight one of the scariest dudes on the planet, Charles Oliveira, most submission wins in the UFC history. And it was an interesting process like nobody else would have gone through. Even speaking to my manager, he's like, dude, I've been doing this for 20 something years and I've never been in a situation like this. I sometimes don't even know how to advise you because I don't know what the right answer is, so you're kind of get stuck in a scenario where you don't know what the right answer is. But sometimes if you have patience, the right answer will reveal itself to you in due time. And here we are. And now November 16th, we get after it.
Yeah, I have so many different routes to go, but you just mentioned Oliveira. What do you feel like you've learned since the last time you fought him? Because that was it'll be essentially a few years ago since you fought him.
And also just the maturation process of who I am as an individual and fighter. I for better or worse, I needed to come into the UFC and stake my claim and prove myself, right? And now I have proven myself. So Chandler 1.0 was come into the UFC, prove the doubters wrong that this Bellator dude can't come in and compete with the best guys in the world.
Right.
Obviously, I have done that. Win, lose, or draw, it's a great fight. Win, lose, or draw, I've hurt everybody that I've fought. Win, lose, or draw, I'm getting fight of the night. Win, lose, or draw, you're on the edge of your seat when Michael Chandler steps inside the octagon, right? And now Chandler 2.0 is, okay, I had an opportunity to step back, fall back in love with the sport. And now I truly believe now more than ever that it's time for me to go win the title. So fighting Oliveira puts me in that position. And then Islam is next. Then maybe Max, or if Conor at any given time can get his stuff together, I'll fight him. So I'm just excited to fight differently. I know the mistakes I made. It was my second fight in the UFC. Just had a crazy knockout of Dan Hooker a couple months before that. I got thrown into that training camp. I essentially had 3 weeks off between training camps when Hunter called me and said, hey, you're fighting Oliveira in Houston for the title. So I went right back into training camp and I was just going and going and going. And I didn't have a lot of time to fill up my cup enough and fill up my mental enough to really fight the way that I needed to fight to win. I needed to go out there and just try to put a beating on somebody. And that's been a lot of fun thus far, but Chandler 2.0 is coming for, not just for blood, but coming for the title.
So is there a different Chandler 2.0, a different kind of maybe strategy, I guess, about it? Because if you look at like Chandler Gaethje, it's going to be explosive. Mm-hmm. Chandler Poirier, it's going to be explosive on their feet. Chandler McGregor, it's going to probably be on the feet and explosive. Like Oliveira is kind of an unorthodox, kind of a weirder fighter. Mm-hmm. Like you've been on the bus before and we've talked about, hey, you're pretty good at wrestling too. Like, are we seeing
the whole world is like Chandler?
More of a heady, more of a heady Chandler. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, but it's still even at my most strategic and even at my most veteran and even at my most smart, I'm still going to be the most violent guy who does it that way. Right. Yeah. because I love the violence. I have the explosiveness. I have the skills, and I know I can go out there and finish anybody in the first round. So immediately, just like I always do, I'm still going to put pressure right away. I'm still going to be in your face for 25 minutes. I'm still going to make you second guess yourself and fight off of your back foot because I want to be in control. I'm always going to be in control, but I think there's just been a different set of decision making and a different set of game plan that I looked at in this last training camp, because I realized the opportunity. I'm in the best position in the sport of mixed martial arts right now. If you look at it, the fighting this number 1 contender fight, having a contract already signed and connected to with Conor McGregor for the Ultimate Fighter. So I have nothing but huge fights coming up. So yeah, that gets me excited to go out there and entertain, but it also gets me excited to go out and show and prove that I'm the best fighter in the world at 155 pounds. So I'm going to show that on November 16th. But it's still going to be violent and it's still going to be fun. So you guys better buy the pay-per-view.